The signal came quietly across the stars. It was not meant for humans, but for anyone who might hear it. A small colony, far away on the edge of known space, had sent out a desperate call for help. Their defenses had fallen, their cities were burning, and their families were fleeing underground tunnels. The message repeated again and again, a cry filled with fear. For most of the galaxy, the call was easy to ignore. The colony belonged to a minor alien species that had no strong allies. Their home was considered unimportant, a place not worth saving when powerful enemies arrived. Many who received the signal marked it as hopeless. Some even thought the destruction of the colony would serve as a warning to others. But the message did not vanish. It kept traveling until it reached human space. On Earth, the leaders gathered to listen. The message was translated, and its meaning was clear. Help us. We are dying. We cannot survive alone. Around the table, there was silence. No treaty bound humans to the colony. No agreement demanded that they come. If humanity ignored it, no one would question them. Yet the silence in the room grew heavy, because every human there remembered their own history. Humanity had grown on a dangerous world. Storms, hunger, and endless struggles had shaped their lives. They had once fought each other, divided by borders and pride. But again and again, people had risen when hope was nearly gone. They had faced floods, plagues, disasters, and wars, and somehow had endured. When they looked at the alien plea, they did not see strangers. They saw themselves. The debate was short, but full of meaning. Some argued that the risks were too high. If humanity intervened, they might gain a powerful enemy. Resources would be spent, lives would be lost, and the reward was unclear. Others spoke with fire in their voices. They said that if humanity ignored the call, then they were no better than the ones who had turned away. At last, the decision was made. Humanity would answer the call. Orders spread quickly. In orbit above Earth and other human worlds, fleets began to move. Shipyards that had been quiet came alive, workers rushing to finish repairs and load supplies. Massive carriers lit their engines, followed by destroyers and cruisers. Troop ships were filled with soldiers, engineers, and medics. The mission was simple: go to the colony, drive out the invaders, and save as many lives as possible. The plan was dangerous, but humanity was used to danger. Among the crews, the mood was mixed. Some felt fear, others excitement, and many carried both. Young soldiers trained in the corridors of their ships, practicing again and again, knowing they might never come home. Engineers checked every system, every weapon, making sure nothing failed when it mattered most. Pilots memorized maps of the enemy's known formations, while medics packed their kits with supplies. They did not know the colony personally, but that did not matter. The call had been answered, and they would not go back on their word. As the fleet prepared to depart, word began to spread. Other alien races who heard of it were confused. Why would humans, still young among the stars, rush into a war that was not theirs? Some called them reckless. Some called them foolish. But a few whispered something else. They said the humans were different. They said the humans remembered things that others had forgotten, like compassion, loyalty, and the will to fight for more than themselves. When the fleet finally launched, the skies over human worlds blazed with fire. Families stood on rooftops and hills, watching the ships vanish into faster-than-light travel. They did not know if their loved ones would return, but pride filled their hearts. Across the galaxy, the desperate colony still burned, unaware that help was on the way. For them, it seemed the universe had abandoned them. Yet, far away, a storm was already moving in their direction. A storm of steel, courage, and fire. Humanity had chosen to act. The Deathworlders, as the galaxy often called them, were on their way. The journey began with silence. Human ships moved across the void, engines glowing as they cut through the black sea of space. Inside, thousands of men and women lived in steel halls, each one preparing in their own way. Some sharpened their focus with drills, while others sat quietly, staring at photos of home. Every heartbeat carried them closer to the unknown colony that had sent the desperate call for help. On the command ship, Admiral Ryan stood at the center of the bridge. His eyes were calm, but his mind carried the weight of what was coming. The reports gave little detail about the enemy, only that they were ruthless and had already crushed the colony's defenses. It was not enough information, yet humans had rarely been given the luxury of fighting battles with certainty. They had learned long ago to adapt in the middle of chaos. Across the fleet, the mood was heavy but steady. The soldiers knew they were not going to fight for their own borders, not for resources or territory, but for strangers they had never met. Yet none of them complained. They understood the choice that had been made. Humanity had answered a call when no one else did, and now it was their duty to stand by that answer. In one of the troop ships, a young soldier named Aaron sat with his unit. The others spoke quietly, sharing stories to ease the tension. Some joked about Earth storms, comparing them to whatever the enemy might bring. Others whispered about fear, wondering what it would be like to face a species that had already crushed an entire world. Aaron listened but stayed quiet. He thought of his little sister back home and promised himself that if he survived, he would tell her how he had fought not only for her but for lives far away. The fleet traveled at faster than light speed, cutting across the stars like arrows of fire. Days passed in strange rhythms. Without sunrise or sunset, time was measured by routine. Wake, train, eat, rest, and repeat. In the hangars, pilots ran checks on their craft, running simulations of battle. In the armories, weapons were cleaned and prepared. The humans were not the strongest or fastest species in the galaxy, but they had learned to fight with discipline and creativity. That was their greatest strength. Beyond the fleet, whispers spread through the galaxy. Alien observers watched from a distance, sending reports to their governments. Some believed humanity was walking into a trap, that their fleet would be destroyed and their young species broken. Others thought it was bravery, perhaps even honor. Yet most agreed on one thing: only humans would take such a risk for people who had never shown them loyalty before. On the fourth day of travel, the first scouting reports arrived. Probes sent ahead revealed broken skies over the colony, clouds of smoke and ash stretching into space. Enemy ships circled like predators, guarding their prey. The colony itself looked half dead, its cities glowing with fires that refused to die. Even through the cold images, the crew could feel the desperation of those still alive down there. The bridge of the command ship fell into silence as the images appeared on the main display. Admiral Ryan did not speak for a long moment. Then he gave the order that every soldier had been waiting for. Prepare for battle. We do not turn back. The announcement spread through the fleet. Soldiers strapped on armor. Pilots climbed into their cockpits. Medics laid out their kits. Engineers checked the engines one last time. A storm was building inside every ship, a storm made of determination and courage. They were Deathworlders, born from struggle, shaped by hardship, and now they would show the galaxy what that truly meant. In the quiet moments before arrival, many thought about home. Some prayed. Some clenched their fists. Some smiled with grim resolve. They knew the risk, but they also knew why they were here. The alien world had called for help, and humanity had answered. That choice gave them strength, for it meant their fight had meaning beyond themselves. At last, alarms sounded. The fleet slowed as they reached the edge of the system. The colony hung ahead of them, scarred and burning. Enemy ships detected their arrival and moved to intercept. Across the human fleet, weapons powered up, engines roared, and shields flared. The journey was over. The battle was about to begin. The human fleet arrived like a wall of steel. Dozens of ships appeared at the edge of the colony's sky, their hulls glowing from the sudden drop out of faster than light travel. For a moment, the enemy ships circling the ruined planet seemed frozen in surprise. No one had expected humans to come. No one had believed the Deathworlders would answer a call that so many had ignored. The silence ended quickly. Enemy signals filled the void, sharp and mocking. They warned the humans to leave before they were destroyed. They laughed at the idea of Earth-born soldiers standing against their war fleets. But the humans did not turn back. On the command ship, Admiral Ryan gave a single order that echoed through every vessel in the fleet: hold position. Show them we are not afraid. On the ground below, the surviving colonists looked up at the sky. For weeks, they had seen only enemy ships blotting out the sun, raining fire upon their homes. Now, strange new shapes filled the heavens. At first, they did not believe their eyes. Could it be that someone had come? Could it be that help had truly arrived? The people in the shelters whispered in awe, their voices trembling with hope. The enemy fired first. Bright streams of energy lanced out from their ships, striking toward the humans. For a moment, the black sky lit up like lightning. But human shields held, their systems absorbing the first strike. Then came the reply. Human cruisers opened fire with rail cannons and missiles. The void shook as metal slugs ripped through enemy armor, explosions blooming like fiery flowers in the dark. In the colony's ruined capital, survivors climbed to the rooftops of broken buildings to watch. They had expected to see the human fleet shattered in minutes. Instead, they saw the opposite. The invaders' ships broke under the storm of human firepower. One by one, they began to fall back, scrambling to regroup. The survivors cried out with joy. For the first time since the attack had begun, the tide was turning. But the battle was only beginning. Enemy reinforcements poured from hidden positions around the planet, rushing to meet the human fleet. The sky became a storm of light, every moment filled with danger. Human ships moved with discipline, covering each other, forming lines that bent but did not break. Fighters launched from carriers, darting through the chaos like hawks. Their pilots wove between enemy craft, striking hard and fast, cutting apart the enemy's formation. Inside the troop ships, soldiers waited as the battle raged above. Aaron and his unit sat strapped in their seats, the roar of engines vibrating through the walls. The red lights above their heads flashed, warning that soon they would be sent down to the surface. Aaron's hands tightened around his rifle. He was afraid, but he was ready. Around him, his comrades nodded at one another, a silent promise that they would stand together no matter what waited below. When the first landing ships broke through the atmosphere, the enemy tried to stop them. Anti-air batteries on the ground filled the skies with fire. But human gunships cleared paths through the storm, raining missiles on the enemy positions. Landing craft pierced through the smoke, descending like arrows toward the burning city. The ground shook as they touched down, ramps opening wide as soldiers poured out. The colonists who had hidden underground heard the thunder of engines above their shelters. They feared it was the enemy coming to finish them, but when they emerged, they saw something they had never imagined. Human soldiers stood in the streets, armor shining through the smoke, weapons steady in their hands. They were not retreating. They were not surrendering. They were advancing. The invaders were quick to respond. Their war machines turned from crushing the last of the colony's defenses and rushed to meet the humans. Towers of steel and claws marched across the ruins, firing as they came. The ground battle had begun. The first clash was brutal. Enemy forces unleashed a storm of fire, but the humans pressed forward, using cover, using teamwork. Their weapons struck with precision, tearing through machines that had once seemed unstoppable. Tanks rolled out from the landing sites, their cannons shattering enemy armor. Overhead, gunships circled, blasting holes in the enemy lines. To the colonists watching, it was like seeing a storm made of flesh and steel. The Deathworlders did not fight like other species. They did not flee when pressed, they did not hesitate when faced with terror. They pushed forward with a will that seemed unbreakable. Every step they took drove the invaders back. The survivors whispered to each other in wonder. No one had come before. No one had even answered their cries. Yet the humans had come, and with them came hope, carried on wings of fire. The battle spread across the colony like fire racing through dry fields. The humans had landed in force, and now their soldiers and machines moved through the broken streets with steady purpose. Every corner echoed with the thunder of weapons, every sky streaked with the trails of gunships and fighters. The invaders, once certain of their victory, now found themselves locked in a struggle they had not expected. Human infantry advanced with discipline. They moved from cover to cover, their eyes sharp and their steps steady. When enemy fire rained down, they crouched low and returned it with precision. When enemy machines stormed forward, human tanks rolled to meet them, their cannons shaking the ground with every shot. Engineers followed behind, repairing vehicles under fire, laying down bridges where streets had been broken, and turning ruins into strong points. Above the city, the roar of the human fleet never ceased. From orbit, heavy cannons rained destruction on enemy fortresses. Guided strikes fell like thunderbolts, shattering the largest enemy machines. The colonists who hid in their shelters could feel the ground tremble, yet this time it was not from terror. It was the sound of salvation, the sound of Deathworlders bringing a storm of fire to drive the enemy away. For the human soldiers, the fighting was fierce. Every alley hid danger, every building could be a trap. The invaders fought with ruthless strength, sending waves of troops forward without fear. But the humans adapted quickly. Where one squad was pinned down, another flanked the enemy. Where a road was blocked, they found another path. When the enemy tried to overwhelm them with sheer numbers, the humans unleashed air strikes that tore the enemy formations apart. Aaron and his unit pressed forward through the shattered city blocks. Smoke and dust clung to the air, making it hard to see, but they never stopped moving. The young soldier's heart pounded, yet his focus remained clear. He and his squad moved as one, covering each other's backs. When an enemy machine burst through a collapsed wall, Aaron's comrade fired a rocket, and together they dragged the wounded clear. The battle was not easy, but it was theirs to win. Everywhere the humans struck, the invaders faltered. For weeks, the colony had been nothing but despair. Now, hope rose again. Colonists came out of hiding, guiding human troops through the ruins, pointing out enemy positions, offering whatever help they could. Though weak and frightened, they carried supplies, carried messages, and even took up tools to repair damaged shelters for the wounded. Side by side with the Deathworlders, they began to feel the power of resistance again. From the enemy's side, the war began to look different. They had expected a simple conquest, another easy victory to add to their record. But the humans were not like the others they had faced. These Deathworlders fought with a fire that seemed endless. They did not stop when wounded, they did not retreat when outnumbered, and they did not collapse when pressed. Instead, they grew sharper, stronger, more dangerous with each hour. The storm of fire continued day and night. Orbiting cruisers unleashed barrages on enemy staging grounds, gunships swept through the skies, and human artillery struck from hidden positions. The invaders could not rest. Every time they tried to regroup, another strike tore through them. Their commanders shouted for order, but the chaos only grew. For the colonists, it was like watching the rising of a new sun. The humans were relentless, yet they were not cruel. They guarded the shelters, they delivered food and medicine, and they shielded families from harm. Children looked at the human soldiers with wide eyes, seeing them as giants wrapped in steel. The name Deathworlders, once spoken with fear, now carried another meaning. To these survivors, it meant protectors, saviors, and warriors who carried hope where none remained. As the days passed, the invaders began to retreat from the capital. Their lines broke, their machines abandoned, their courage shattered. The humans pressed forward without rest, pushing the enemy back street by street, field by field. The storm of fire they brought was not only in their weapons but also in their hearts. It was the fire of a people who had chosen to fight for others, even when no one had asked them to. In the silence between battles, Admiral Ryan stood at the edge of a ruined balcony, looking down at the burning city below. He knew the war was not yet won. Many more battles awaited, and many lives would still be lost. But he also knew this truth: humanity had shown the galaxy who they truly were. Not monsters. Not reckless fools. But Deathworlders who fought for more than survival, who carried storms inside them and released them when justice demanded it. And on that colony, in those days of smoke and thunder, the galaxy began to understand. The city was broken, but the battle was finally turning in favor of the humans. Streets that had once been filled with enemy machines now held human tanks standing guard. The skies that had once carried only the shadow of invader ships now glowed with human patrol craft. Fires still burned, but they burned alongside the bright lights of rescue teams and medical camps. For the first time in weeks, the colonists felt the weight of fear lift from their hearts. Admiral Ryan stood with his officers in the remains of a great hall that had been used by the enemy as a command post. Now, it served as the meeting place between humans and the alien leaders of the colony. The colonists had come in quiet groups, their faces pale with exhaustion, their clothes marked with ash and dust. Yet their eyes were filled with something stronger than despair. They looked at the human officers with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. The colony's governor, an older alien with tired eyes, stepped forward. His voice was steady, though soft. "We did not believe anyone would come. For weeks we sent the signal, but no answer came. We thought we had been abandoned." He bowed his head, then raised it again with dignity. "But you came. Why?" Admiral Ryan's answer was simple. "Because you asked. Because no one else did. And because it was the right thing to do." The words echoed through the room, sinking into the hearts of all who listened. The colonists had expected demands: control over their resources, promises of tribute, perhaps even forced allegiance. But the humans asked for nothing. They had come not for gain, but for principle. As the days passed, the humans and colonists worked side by side. Soldiers helped rebuild shelters while engineers restored broken power lines. Medics tended to alien children with the same care they gave their own. The colony's people, once too afraid to leave their hiding places, now joined in the effort. They brought water, carried supplies, and guided human units through the ruins of their cities. Aaron and his unit were among those assigned to help the colonists recover. He found himself working alongside a group of young aliens who had lost their families in the attacks. Though they did not share a language at first, they learned to communicate with gestures, smiles, and simple words. Aaron showed them how to carry tools, how to lift debris without injury, and how to patch broken walls. In return, they showed him hidden passages and safe paths through the rubble. It was a quiet bond, built not with speeches but with action. At night, fires were lit not only for warmth but for gathering. Colonists and humans sat together, sharing food and stories. The aliens told of the day the invaders had arrived, how their skies had darkened and hope had vanished. The humans told of Earth, of storms and mountains, of a history full of hardship but also survival. Slowly, trust grew where once there had been only fear. The enemy, scattered and wounded, had not vanished completely. Small groups still roamed the outskirts, trying to regroup. Human patrols hunted them down, ensuring they could not rise again. Each victory, small or large, strengthened the spirit of the colony. The invaders who had once seemed unstoppable were now broken shadows, fleeing before the united strength of humans and colonists. On the 10th day after the Great Battle, the colony's governor requested another meeting. This time, it was not to plead for survival, but to offer alliance. Standing before the human officers, he spoke with new strength in his voice. "We owe you more than thanks. You have shown us that we were not forgotten, that we were worth saving. We wish to stand with you, not only as those who were saved, but as allies." Admiral Ryan exchanged glances with his officers. Humanity had not come seeking allies, yet here they were, offered freely. He nodded slowly. "If you choose to walk beside us, we will not turn you away. We do not ask for tribute or control. We ask only for friendship, and for trust." The governor bowed deeply. "You have both." The agreement was simple, yet powerful. It was not written in thick treaties or bound by force. It was forged in the ashes of war, sealed by shared struggle, and strengthened by the memory of fire. For the colonists, the humans had become more than warriors. They were protectors, saviors who had answered when no one else would. For the humans, the colonists had become more than survivors. They were proof that even in a galaxy full of doubt, hope could still grow. In those days, the name Deathworlders began to change in meaning. Once spoken with caution, it was now spoken with respect. The humans had shown that their strength was not just in weapons, but in their will to stand for others. The storm they had brought was terrible to their enemies, but to their allies, it was a shield of fire. And in the broken streets of the colony, a new bond was born, one that neither time nor distance would easily break. News of the humans' victory spread across the galaxy like a rising storm. Messengers carried word of the battle to distant worlds. Reports described the Deathworlders' courage, their precision, and the storm of fire they had unleashed to save a colony no one else had bothered to help. Some listened in awe, others in fear, but all were forced to recognize that humans were different. In the council chambers of a nearby star system, alien leaders gathered. Screens lit their faces with images of the human fleet and the burned cities the invaders had left behind. "They are reckless," one leader said, voice sharp. "They put themselves in danger for a species that is not their ally. This is madness." Another shook their head. "No. It is something else. They fight not for power, not for gain, but for a choice we have long forgotten. They fight for what is right." Even among the invaders, tales of the battle spread. Soldiers who had survived spoke of the humans with a mixture of anger and disbelief. They had expected easy victories, and yet humans had fought as if the universe itself had sent them. Stories circulated of tanks rolling through streets like unstoppable mountains, of gunships cutting enemy lines with surgical precision, and of soldiers who refused to retreat even when surrounded. For the first time, the invaders feared a species they had once dismissed. Back on the colony, the rebuilding continued. Human engineers and soldiers worked alongside alien survivors to restore what had been lost. Power lines were repaired, shelters rebuilt, and water systems cleared of debris. Schools reopened, and markets began to buzz with life again. Children played among the ruins, watched over by human soldiers who smiled despite the exhaustion on their faces. Their presence was no longer frightening, it was comforting. Aaron walked through the streets with a small group of colonists. They carried supplies and shared stories. The young aliens spoke of dreams for the future, of hopes for a world where the invaders could never return. Aaron listened, realizing how much courage it had taken for these people to survive so long in fear. He understood that the humans had not only brought weapons and firepower, but also hope and courage that could not be measured in numbers or technology. From orbit, Admiral Ryan watched the colony come alive. The human fleet remained in place for now, ready to respond if the enemy tried to regroup. But he allowed a measure of rest. He knew the galaxy was watching, and the actions taken here would echo far beyond this world. Humanity had shown that when they answered a call, they answered fully, with skill, determination, and compassion. Across the galaxy, some species began to reconsider their views of humans. They had seen the strength of the Deathworlders in battle, but more importantly, they had seen how humans could choose to act without expectation of reward. Alliances formed quietly, as smaller civilizations began reaching out to humans, offering trade, knowledge, and friendship. The galaxy had seen the power of principle and courage combined. Meanwhile, the invaders were no longer a threat to the colony. Their scattered forces were hunted down or fled to distant systems. Yet their fear of humanity remained. In whispered messages between enemy commanders, the words repeated, "The Deathworlders came. They fought. And we could not win." It was a warning, a lesson, and a recognition of the human strength all at once. The colony celebrated quietly. Not with grand parades, but with acts of daily life returning. Markets reopened, children went back to school, and neighbors helped each other rebuild homes. The human soldiers who remained became part of the community, not as rulers, but as protectors. In every conversation, in every handshake, the bond grew stronger. Trust was built not through treaties, but through action, through shared struggle, and through the fire that had been endured together. Admiral Ryan and the colony's governor met once more. They stood in the city square, surrounded by the results of their joint efforts. "You have shown us something greater than strength," the governor said. "You have shown us what it means to care for those who cannot fight for themselves. We will never forget this." Ryan nodded. "And humanity will remember you. Your courage is as much a part of this victory as our firepower. Together, we have proven what can happen when choice meets action." As the fleet prepared to return to human space, the galaxy watched. Stories of the battle, of the storm of fire, and of the trust between humans and the colony traveled faster than any ship. The name Deathworlders began to be spoken with new respect, as a people not only dangerous in battle, but honorable, principled, and capable of inspiring hope where none had existed. And on that distant colony, the survivors looked to the stars with gratitude. They had been saved by strangers, by a species that had chosen to fight for them. They had seen the strength of the humans, but even more, they had seen the courage that comes from choosing to act for the right reason. It was a lesson they would carry forward, a story they would tell for generations. The day the humans prepared to leave, the colony was quiet but full of life. Streets that had once been filled with smoke and ruin now carried the sounds of children playing and merchants calling out to each other. Homes had been repaired, gardens planted, and water flowing once more through cleared channels. The survivors moved with a new confidence, walking taller because they had endured, and because the humans had come when no one else did. Aaron stood on a small hill overlooking the city, watching the sun rise over the rebuilt rooftops. His unit had spent weeks helping the colonists recover, clearing rubble, delivering supplies, and protecting the streets from the last scattered enemy forces. He had seen fear and hopelessness, and now he saw hope and determination. In the eyes of the alien children, he could see admiration. In the faces of their parents, gratitude. And in every corner of the city, the invisible bond between humans and the colonists had grown stronger. Admiral Ryan walked with the colony's governor through the central square. They stopped to watch a group of young aliens tending to a garden planted along a once bombed street. "You have done more than fight," the governor said softly. "You have helped us rebuild our lives." Ryan nodded. "It was the right thing to do. You called for help. We answered. And together, we showed what can be done when courage meets action." The colonists had prepared a small ceremony to thank the humans. They could not offer riches, nor could they offer power. Instead, they offered what they had: trust, friendship, and the promise of future cooperation. Families presented gifts made by hand, small tokens of appreciation. Children handed flowers, their smiles wide with joy. Soldiers of the human fleet accepted the offerings humbly, knowing that their reward had never been treasure or praise, but the lives they had saved. As the humans prepared their ships for departure, colonists came forward to shake hands, hug, and offer words of thanks. Aaron found himself speaking with a young alien girl who had lost her home in the attack. She had watched the humans fight and rebuild. "Will you come back?" she asked, her voice quiet but full of hope. Aaron smiled and nodded. "We will. And we will always remember you." She nodded, her eyes shining, understanding the promise. In orbit, the human fleet powered up their engines. The stars stretched before them, and beyond them, the galaxy waited. They had come to answer a call, to fight a battle that no one else dared to fight, and they had succeeded. But the journey home was not only a return to Earth, it was a message to the galaxy. Humanity had proven that their strength was not only in their weapons, but in their choice to act for what was right. Across the stars, alien civilizations whispered about the battle. Some were fearful, knowing that humans could not be easily stopped. Others were hopeful, thinking that perhaps one day humanity might stand for them as well. The stories of the Deathworlders' courage, their storm of fire, and their unyielding will to help others spread quickly. Reputation traveled faster than ships or messages. Humanity's name became one of both caution and respect. Back on the colony, the governor addressed the people. "Remember what has been done here. Remember those who came when no one else did. Build your homes, your schools, your gardens. Live with courage, and honor those who chose to fight for you. The humans came not as conquerors, but as friends. And that is a lesson we must never forget." Aaron stood silently, watching the humans climb into their ships. The engines flared, lights glowing as the fleet lifted off. He felt a mixture of pride and sadness, knowing that he and his comrades were leaving behind people who had become more than allies, they had become friends. Yet he also knew that the bond formed in fire and struggle would last far longer than any distance. As the fleet disappeared into faster than light travel, the colony's people looked to the sky with gratitude. They had survived the storm. They had been saved not by chance, but by the courage and will of the humans. Across the galaxy, the tale of that storm of fire would be told for generations, a story of bravery, compassion, and the choice to stand for others when no one else would. In the quiet of space, Admiral Ryan looked at the stars ahead. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers, and full of calls for help yet unheard. He knew that humans would answer again, as they always had, because they were not just warriors, they were protectors. And in every world where the lost cried out for help, the Deathworlders' storm of fire would be remembered, a symbol of hope, courage, and the power of choosing to do what is right. The fleet vanished into the stars, leaving behind a healed colony, a grateful people, and a galaxy that had seen humanity's true strength. The storm of fire had ended, but its story would live forever.